Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Thank you for coming. We wanted to give you all a sense of the programs that are going to be available within the coming year for California climate investments, and this webinar will be specific to tribal governments. As some of you may know, this webinar is part of a series, and the recordings of past webinars can be found on the California Climate Investments website under events. This webinar will also be recorded, and we'll be posting today's slides as well for future reference. The funding section of today's webinar is in partnership with two program grantees. We're really excited to have them join us, and so you'll be hearing today from Cindy Jurisco from Big Pine Paiute Tribe, as well as Sean Muir and Kyle Ryan, who both work with the 29 Palms Band of Mission Indians. In the last half hour of this presentation, you'll also be hearing from Joshua Simmons from Prosper Sustainably. So welcome. I wanted to give you all a little bit of background as we dive in. We will be splitting this webinar in two sections. So the first section will be an hour long and will be dedicated to current and upcoming funding opportunities. And the second section will be on two key ways to provide input. So we will start off with a very brief overview of California climate investments, move into the funding opportunities that we have available, and then we will welcome our speakers and do a brief Q&A. So next, I wanted to tell you all how to be able to interact with us. So there's three ways to be able to ask questions during the webinar. And one is that you can go to the GoToWebinar questions function, and you'll find that in your controls off to the right. And then you can also send us a direct message via Twitter. You can also email us, and so if you would like to tweet us, you tweet us at CA Climate Invest, or you can email us at info@CAClimateinvestments.ca.gov. When we get to the Q&A, the questions will be read out loud by me, and then links will be shared throughout the webinar. So if you are calling through a landline, please feel free to use Twitter or email to ask questions. But also, if there are any links or handouts that you would like us to send you, please go ahead and email us and we can send that to you right away. Now, one other thing that I want to mention before we jump in is that we encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar. So our team will be working to make sure that we provide as thoughtful and correct questions as we can. And the more time that we have to be able to really answer them thoughtfully, the better. So please don't feel like you have to hold on to your questions, and go ahead and put them in the chat so that we have them ready to go when we get to that portion of the presentation. So what is California Climate Investments? For anyone who might be new to our programs, California Climate Investments is a statewide initiative that puts billions of cap and trade dollars to work by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, strengthening the economy, and improving public health and the environment, particularly in under-resourced communities. California Climate Investments includes over 40 programs working to reach state climate and equity goals with a wide range of project types. So this includes affordable housing, renewable energy, public transportation, zero-emission vehicles, environmental restoration, sustainable agriculture, recycling, and so much more. To date, 55% of California climate investments are made in disadvantaged communities and low-income communities and households, which continues to exceed our statutory minimum of 35%. So we wanted to get to know the audience a little bit. So we'll be launching a poll right now, and we'd like folks to take a few seconds to answer and let us know if you have ever applied to any of our programs before. Okay, and we'll be closing up the poll in just a second. Great, so it looks like 67% of you are new to California climate investments and have not applied before. So hopefully you'll be able to identify some opportunities that will work for you during this presentation, and we hope that you'll find something that suits your needs. Now, the next question that I'd like to ask the audience is, have you ever applied through the state for funding? So I know a lot of folks might be familiar with federal funding, possibly local funding, and I wanted to get a sense of how familiar folks are with what the state has to offer. Okay, and we'll just give this a couple more seconds. Okay, and I'll close it off here. So it looks like it's about an even split. And some folks have been exposed to the funding opportunities within the state and have interacted with them in some way, but half of you all have not. So I hope that some of the information we'll share with you today will be useful. We'll be covering funding that is available through California Climate Investments, but also some additional resources that go beyond California Climate Investments. Okay. So now let's jump into these funding opportunities. Before we do, I want to let you all know that these slides are pretty dense. There's a lot of information in them, but we definitely do not expect you to absorb and gather all of that information and remember it. The best way to really take part in this webinar is to sit back and take note of any programs that you think might be a good fit. And then once the slides are posted, feel free to then use those slides to learn a little bit more, follow all the links that we've linked for you and all the resources that we've been able to gather, and then from there decide whether a program might be a good fit. Okay, so the first thing we wanted to share with you all is our website. So our website will contain all of the funding opportunities that we share today from California Climate Investments. And we have a page specific to tribal governments. So when you go on our website, you click on programs and then down to tribal governments. And from there, you'll be able to see all of the programs that tribal governments are eligible for. Okay, so here's our first program. We're going to start with the programs that have to do with land conservation and planning. So first up is Forest Health. So Forest Health is administered by CAL FIRE, and it's a really great program because it helps fund reforestation, forest fuel reduction, pest management, prescribed forest biomass utilization and conservation easements or land acquisition. Projects must focus on large-scale landscape type of forest lands, such as watersheds, firesheds, or larger local management units. The total project should aim to be no less than 800 acres in size, and the units do not have to be contiguous. Next, we have fire prevention, and this is also through CAL FIRE. And this program aims to reduce wildland fires to habitable structures and communities while maximizing carbon sequestration and healthy wildland habitat and minimizing uncontrolled release emissions emitted by wildfires. So next is Healthy Soils. Healthy Soils promotes the development of healthy soils in California's farmlands and ranchlands. There's funding available through this program that tribes can apply to, and at this time we're anticipating that the timeline will be available in fall of 2021. And HSP initiatives can be up to $100,000, while demonstration projects can be either up to $250,000 for one specific type or $100,000 for a second specific type. So we encourage you to look into the program materials here and decide whether the incentives program or the demonstration project is right for you, And if the demonstration project is right for your needs, then look into the 2 different types and then be able to assess the scale of your project from there. SWEEP is administered through the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And they're a really great program because they focus on water efficiency, and they can fund on-farm pump, motor, enhancement or replacement irrigation systems, and fuel conversion. The timeline for this solicitation is anticipated in fall of 2021. Next, we have the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program. So this program is expected to open in spring of 2022, and it helps protect at-risk agricultural lands from conversion to more pollution-heavy land uses, such as residential or commercial development. The program provides 2 types of awards, and those are planning grants or agricultural conservation easement grants. Easement funding are available to local and regional government entities and nonprofit institutions, and strategy and outcome grants are available to local governments in collaboration with other organizations such as land trusts or open space districts. Pre-proposals are required for this program, so please make sure to sign up and stay up to date for when pre-proposals go live. So shifting from land conservation and planning, we'll next talk about housing. So AHSD is a pretty special program because they have a tribal set-aside. They have a tribal set-aside committing to fund at least 1 tribal application, and the max award for that is $30 million. The timeline for this program is pending, so please sign up for updates to be able to be kept up to date. But in short, this program funds land use, housing, transportation, land preservation projects to support infill and compact development that reduce greenhouse gases. Oh, and I should also mention that SGC program provide technical assistance and application assistance. So this program is a program with a lot of support and resources behind it. Next, we'll talk about the Low-Income Weatherization program. And so this program is great for farm workers. So this allows farm worker housing to have no-cost rooftop solar photovoltaic systems and energy efficiency upgrades. And they focus specifically on low-income farm worker households. And the aim there is to really reduce greenhouse gas emissions and lower energy costs for participants. There is no deadline to apply for this program, and projects are accepted on a rolling basis. Moving into equipment, the farmer program is administered through air districts. So you would apply through your air district, and it would be through your air district that you would inquire about funding availability. And we've linked air districts here, so please feel free to explore that list and reach out. We also have a recording from our last webinar where we had somebody from the air districts come and speak and explain that process a little bit more. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, please go ahead and visit our website and look at those past recordings. So the farmer program can help you fund harvesting equipment, trucks, pumps, engines, tractors, and utility terrain vehicles, as well as a whole host of other equipment. The actual equipment that gets funded is dependent on the air district. So again, I stress that you should really look into your air district, and the first step would be communicating with them if this is a program that you might be interested in. So now we have a few programs that are geared towards vehicles, and the first one here is the Community Air Protection Incentives Program. And this program helps owners of older and higher polluting vehicles and also equipment replace them with newer models. Similarly to the program we just discussed, CAP is administered through the air district. So again, for this program, you would contact your air district and see what types of, well, the amount of funding they have and what types of replacements that they fund, and through there you'd be able to undergo their process and apply. Next is HVIP. So this is the Hybrid and Zero Emission Truck and Bus Voucher Program. This is an important one to know about because the application timeline is actually opening up on August 10th at 10 a.m. Something that's really important to know about this program is that it fills up very quickly, and demand is usually expected to be high. And so if this is a program that you want to participate in, you want to be there at 10 a.m. and ready to go. And this program is great because it provides vouchers for purchasers and leasers of zero-emission trucks and buses. And as I mentioned, it is a first-come and first-served basis. So next is the Clean Vehicle Rebate Program. And this program helps promote vehicle adoption, specifically clean vehicle adoption, by offering rebates. And those rebates can be up to $7,000 for the purchase or release of a new or eligible zero-emission vehicle. And this can include electric, plug-in hybrid electric, or fuel cell vehicles. CVRP offers fleet vehicle rebates as well, and tribal governments and other entities are eligible for up to 1 rebate per lifetime, or up to $4,500 per vehicle. So the next transportation and mobility program is CMMO, and we will be having a speaker today who is a CMMO grantee. This is another pretty special program because they also have a tribal set-aside. Something to note is that their tribal set-asides are currently pending public feedback, and so if this tribal set-aside and the funding amounts is something that you want to have a say in, we encourage you to get involved and let the program know and stay up to date and be able to attend their events. We anticipate this to go live in early 2022, and this program will fund small-scale zero-emission mobility projects that include car sharing, carpooling and van pooling, bike sharing, innovative transit services, and ride-on-demand services. So next we have a program that's dedicated to drinking water. And the SAFER program is dedicated to making sure that Californians all have access to safe and affordable drinking water as quickly as possible. This is a great program because it is open year-round. You don't need to have a lot of plans in place in order to be able to inquire. And the first step is typically to fill out a pre-application through their financial assistance application tool or their FAST tool. And then from there, program staff will assist you with the application process and make sure that the program is a good fit. And again, you can apply at any time, and there is no cap funding amount for this program. So moving into workforce training and development. We've talked about land, we've talked about housing and equipment, and now we get to talk about people a little bit. So the California Conservation Corps has 2 functions. Now in this slide, we mostly emphasize the projects that they undertake, but something that I also want folks to know is that they're also a workforce training and development program, meaning that you can visit their website and you can sign up to participate in this program, and it really allows folks to be able to gather skills and be able to expand the type of work that might be available to them. And the type of projects that those folks would work on really range by the type of subprogram in California Conservation Corps. So 2 big programs they have is the Energy Corps and Forest Health. So the Energy Corps is all about energy efficiency and renewable projects, while the Forest Health Project programs are more about state forests, reducing fuel for wildfires, and removing dead and dying hazard trees. So Nexus of New Program, and this is also a workforce development program. This program is expected to launch later this summer, and this will be the first solicitation for this program. This program is a collaboration between CARB and the California Energy Commission, and they're looking to really invest into zero-emission vehicle workforce training and development in under-resourced communities throughout the state. And so if professional development is something that folks are interested in, I would really recommend keeping an eye on this program and signing up for your updates early so that you can participate in the full process. So next is a capacity building program, community air grants. So this solicitation is actually live now, and the deadline for applying is October 1st. We have a grantee with us today, and the 29 Palms Band of Mission Indian staff that will be joining us will be telling us all about the project that they proposed for this program and how that project is proceeding now, but also what the lessons learned that they have found while participating in this program. Something that I really want folks to know about is that they actually have a workshop tomorrow. So tomorrow they will be answering questions, and those questions can be generally about the application, but they can also be in the nuts and bolts of the application. So regardless of where you are in the process, this is a great event to attend, and I will ask my staff to please drop the link to the workshop in the chat, and so that everybody can have access to that in case you don't get to see these slides again before tomorrow. Oh, and I should mention that projects are funded for a maximum of $300,000, and they help to fund partners so that they can participate in partnership with government to identify, evaluate, and ultimately reduce air pollution and exposure to harmful emissions in their communities. The very last program that we have for you today is TA. So a lot of the programs that we've shown you today do have technical assistance, but we also have a California Climate Investments Technical Assistance Program. And this program funds a specific set of, or not funds, but supports a specific set of programs that you can see here, including the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program, the Healthy Soils Program, the State Water Efficiency Enhancement Program, Alternative Manure Management Program, and the Sustainable Agricultural Lands and Conservation Program. So if any of those programs are of interest to you, we really recommend that you reach out to this TA directly, but also through the program staff to make sure that you're taking advantage of all the resources that are available to you. So now I wanted to share with you all a supplemental handout. So this handout should be in your handout section. So if you look in your controls off on the right, click on the supplemental program information handout. And this is a new document that we created for this webinar. And what this does is it answers some of the key questions that we've been hearing over and over, like, you know, does this program have experience funding tribes, and do they have tribal grantees? Do you have technical assistance for a specific program? What are the eligibility requirements? Do I need to be a federally recognized tribe, or can a non-recognized tribe apply? And also, do they require a limited waiver of sovereign immunity? So this handout is an effort to help answer all those questions, and it's a companion piece to these slides, so that together you'll be able to decide whether a program is a good fit for you. So now let's talk about accessing these programs beyond this webinar. So all of the programs we've shared for you today have funding available within the next year. So either this year or in 2022, there will be solicitations coming out for all of those programs. However, if you want to search for programs that are currently open to the application, then we have a few databases that we think would be interesting to folks. So the first two here are the Funding Wizard and the California Grants Portal. The Funding Wizard synthesizes local, state, and federal grant, rebate, and incentive opportunities for funding sustainability projects. And the State Grants Portal is operated through the State Library and is a great way to search for competitive and first-come, first-served grant loan opportunities offered through the state. Think of the Grants Portal as a big database for state grants and loans, while the Funding Wizard includes a wider scope of funding sources, but is aimed at sustainability projects specifically. All of the programs that we've mentioned here today would be featured on both of these portals, but these portals do include a much wider scope than what California Climate Investments offers. Two more tools that you can use are the Funding Finder tool, and this is a great tool for infrastructure and medium and heavy duty alternative fuel vehicles, and Empower Innovations. Empower Innovations is through the Energy Commission, so apologies, that's actually a typo. But they have a database of funding opportunities and curated resources, but are also a platform for folks to be able to connect and build networks around their relationship to working towards a clean economy. Now, speaking about databases for partnerships, we have a new tool that launched just last month. Community Connections is a database that brings together folks that are interested in California climate investments and would be open to partnering to co-develop projects. So we invite folks to jump into the tool, explore it, join the database, and start connecting with folks. These are all folks that have an interest in these programs, have an interest in climate, and together with the multitude of priorities that California climate investments also values. The last database that we wanted you all to know about is a tribal-specific database. And this database is on clean energy and climate change funding opportunities. And in order to get access to this database, you have to participate in the California Tribal Gap Analysis questionnaire effort. The questionnaire is linked here for future reference, but just know that in the second half of this webinar, we will have the person leading this effort, Joshua Simmons, tell us a little bit more about this. Okay, so you've all heard me talk at you for what I'm sure seems like forever, and I'm sure that you all are ready to hear from somebody new. So with that, I will invite up Sean Muir and Kyle Ryan to come up, share their slides, and they will tell you a little bit about their experience with community air grants. So Sean Muir is the Director of Tribal Programs for the 29 Palms Band of Mission Indians and has worked for the tribe for 11 years. She oversees the Environmental and Cultural Resources departments and serves as the grant administrator for the tribe. Kyle Ryan is the 29 Palms Band of Mission Indians air technician, and he is responsible for maintaining the air station that they run and operating air quality instruments, conducting quality control checks, and analyzing and interpreting air quality data. Okay, take it away, Ryan, Kyle and Sean.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Christina, and thank you for everyone that's participating. I love the opportunity to share whenever we have a moment about the AIR program, which has been a great success for the tribe and for my department. So, Christina, I think you have to turn over sharing to me. Thank you. And I will pull up the presentation. Can everyone see it now? Thumbs up. Kyle, can you see the presentation?
Yeah, I can see it.
So, as Christina mentioned, Kyle and I were with the 29 Palms Band of Mission Indians. The tribe is located in Southern California, and we're near to the Salton Sea. So, the original impetus for this air monitoring program was not only to expand our air quality monitoring efforts or expand our monitoring efforts in general. We have a pretty robust water quality monitoring program, but air is something that we had a hard time breaking into, specifically because of the lack of funding opportunities available. And we had pursued some other federal grants, especially the Administration for Native Americans and the US EPA. But this renewed kind of urgency to obtain funding to establish an air monitoring station came when the Salton Sea underwent a water transfer called the Quantification Settlement Agreement that would expose up to 74,000 acres of dry lake bed, up to 2047, as you see in the diagram there. And the tribe was concerned about this because we're located about 15 miles west of the Salton Sea. And as you can see, there are only about 6 air monitoring sensors directly around the sea. And this is an updated map. There were less at the time. And, they're not regulatory air monitoring stations. So the tribe wanted to establish good quality regulatory data on which to make, air management decisions and to really understand how this quantification settlement agreement might impact the tribe. So we searched for grant applications or grant opportunities, and throughout that process, I kind of spoke to a lot of people and learned a lot about air monitoring, a lot of information that I never knew before. I don't have a background in air monitoring, but through the kindness of many different air groups, including Tribal Air Monitoring Service out of Las Vegas, and the Bureau of Land Management, and all the folks at the Salt and Sea Management Program, I was able to learn quite a lot. And so I already had kind of a foundational knowledge of how to put together the application. And from there, when this AB 617 Community Air Grant was announced, it was kind of a no-brainer that we wanted to apply, and took that project and all that foundational knowledge that we had collected over the last few years and submitted a grant application to CARB. And so it took about 2 months to develop at that time. And I'll tell you why. As I mentioned, we used the previous grant work plans that were developed, and we put together a budget that included a lot of staff time, and so we have been able to fund the air technician position for several years now through the CARB AB 617 grants. And since we were also new, we wanted to make sure that we had consulting services and folks who really were experienced and knew what they were doing to help us and guide our way in developing this brand new program. We also put in all of the equipment that was purchased, and Kyle will be giving you kind of a little tour of our air site momentarily. And we wanted to develop a website so that tribal members and then the community at large could also make decisions about their health. If it's a very poor air quality day, we want the community to know about it so that they can make those personal health decisions. And then we did include in-kind support. So don't be afraid to put in costs that you'll be incurring, such as management and administration of the grant. The air site itself was actually located on the Cabazon Band of Mission Indians Reservation, which is right next door to the 29 Palms Band. And so they provided us with a building permit and also some monitoring support, just staff support, getting the air station up and running. So we put that into the grant as well. And then we put it all together into a project schedule, broke down what we were going to do and when. And the part of the application that I think took the longest were these last two items, the partners and letters of support. There's a section on partnerships in the grant application. We really want to discuss all the different entities and organizations that you've worked with in developing the project that you're applying for the funding for. And then any consultants, as I mentioned, you want to have like letters of commitment. And so those things take time. You don't want to send someone a template letter of support and expect them to turn it around in a day. That's just doesn't always come through. So you want to give people plenty of time. And then the tribal resolution, because depending on the tribe that you're working for, it could take longer or shorter. Everyone has their own procedures there, but a lot of times I find that that is one of the holdups in getting that resolution passed so that you can submit your grant application on time. So I wanted to show this slide. It's a breakdown of the tasks that were submitted on the tribe's FY19 grant proposal. And I think these tasks are very important because these are the tasks you'll be reporting on if you're awarded. And so every quarterly report that you submit is going to be based on the tasks that are broken down in your work plan. So that's important to note. But here I'm just wanted to go over that the 2018 grant was the first CARB grant that the tribe was able to obtain. And so we started monitoring for PM 2.5 and PM 10 in March of 2019. And so, with this air station, we're able to monitor the effects of the Salton Sea and wind-blown dust in the eastern Coachella Valley. And there's a photo of our air station. You can see the Met Tower to the left there, and then the sensor intake on the roof. So I'm going to hand it over to Kyle now, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the air station itself.
Can everyone hear me? All right, perfect. Okay, so for air monitoring. For our air monitoring, we actually use two instruments. And on the left, we have the Teledyne FRM instrument, and on the right, we have the Teledyne T640X. And So our T640X instrument is continuously recording PM 2.5, PM10, and PM course data. And this is the instrument measuring data that is publicly shared to the community. And for the FRM instrument on the left, FRM stands for Federal Reference Methods Instrument. And this is used to collect samples by filter sampling. And this instrument is especially effective in sampling wind-blown dust. And so the entire purpose of the FRM is to be a reference monitor co-located next to the T640X instrument. Next slide. So for particulate matter. So one of the main concerns of air quality in the Eastern Coachella Valley is the effects of wind-blown dust. Wind-blown dust is responsible for a large fraction of the PM10 levels. And this is important because the PM10 levels recorded in the Eastern Coachella Valley commonly average readings above California's daily average safety level of 50 micrograms per meter cubed. And so regarding PM 2.5 events, these events are generally caused by incomplete combustion. And some examples of incomplete combustion that cause events of PM 2.5 here include things like wildfires, long-range transport of wildfire smoke, traffic from surrounding freeways, and also stuff like fireworks, as after 4th of July, we did have a high reading of PM 2.5. Next slide.
Okay, so just to kind of wrap it up, the importance of air quality monitoring to the 29 Palms Band is to just better understand the air quality in the Eastern Coachella Valley and on the reservation, to understand those changes that may be taking place due to the changes in the water level at the Salton Sea, and then to allow community members to access real-time air quality data at a site that's on the reservation or very near to it, and be able to, be empowered to make their personal health decisions based on that. And so with that, the link to the tribe's air quality site is there on the slides, and I believe you'll be provided a copy of the slides after the webinar is finished. So that's all we had for you today, and we're open to any questions that you may have about the funding program or the air monitoring station in general.
Thank you so much to you both. So now I want to invite Cindy Jurisco to come join us. And we're really happy to have Cindy with us today. She works with the Big Pine Paiute Tribe, and she'll be sharing with us her experience as an awardee of the Clean Mobility Options Pilot Program, which, as you might recall, is one of the programs with the tribal set-aside. So specifically, her project type was a community transportation needs assessment. And she'll tell us a little bit more about what that means and what that data looked like. Cindy is the Air Program Coordinator for the Big Pine Paiute Tribe of Owens Valley, and she has worked with the tribe for close to 5 years. She's done air quality monitoring work in different capacities for 10 years on and off, and her big passion is education outreach on climate change. Her master's degree is in environmental education. So take it away, Cindy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so so the Big Pine Paiute Tribe has had an air monitoring program for as long as I've been working there, for about 5 years. And we are located in Eastern California, so close to the Owens Lake, which, like the Salton Sea, has particulate matter, emissions as our primary pollutant. But so we are going to go with a little different project for the air monitoring program. So next slide, please. So we found out about the Clean Mobility Options Program through, email notices. So we have another California Air Resources Board grant that we're implementing too. And so I'm on their listserv, so I did receive notices about the program. But what kind of curbed us to apply was a message from Grid Alternatives, who we also partnered with in the past, they thought this was an excellent fit for the Big Pine Paiute Tribe. So I did put in an application. So next slide, please. And by the time we decided to apply, it was kind of short notice. So they did, provide technical support in the way of workshops. So how to apply, and since this is a new program, it's a pilot program for clean mobility options and CARB. So they provided that technical assistance for the application, but it was pretty easy to fill out the application. It took me, a few days just in time and answering the questions. So I would, encourage you, make sure that you read the questions over, and you make sure you have enough time to get the information that they're going to ask for. So you need to know, what is your disadvantaged community status as a tribe? What census block are you in? What type of local information the application is asking for. And then the applications are turned in on a first come, first served basis. So you have to be there right at, it was 9 o'clock in the morning. So you have to be there right at 9 o'clock and turn in your application, and it's reviewed, and, they decide on that when they receive your application. So it's time stamped. So next slide, please. So once we did receive that we were going to get the grant funding, a couple of things that took some time in actually getting the project going is a certificate of insurance. So as a tribe, we had most of the insurance requirements already filled. That was, basic liability, auto insurance, that kind of stuff. But they did ask for, in this funding, cyber liability insurance as part of the certificate. So that, I asked more about that because I was like, it's expensive, and it's to add it to the policy took some time. So, but it's basically, we are asking through this needs assessment process, we are asking, individuals' information, and some of it we're doing online. So if somebody was hacked in the process of getting that information, the tribe could be liable. So it made sense, or the state could be liable. So, and the other thing, that as a tribe, this funding did require limited waiver of sovereign immunity. So that took, explaining to my tribal council, what does this mean? What sovereignty rights are you giving away? And what type of sovereignty are they, asking about? And so it's a big deal. So it ended up with some discussions with CARB and with my tribe, but it exists to protect the state and to protect the tribe. So I explained that to tribal council, that, in case somebody was hurt while conducting the needs assessment, or the tribe spent the money other than what it was intended for, the state has no recourse unless they put this limited waiver in place. So I explained that to the tribe, and they understood that, and under certain limitations, they're agreeable. We did have to do a little back and forth with the wording, so we did those changes. And CARB Legal did send a wording example, and we worked off of that. So it did get turned in, but it took a month to get that in place. So next slide, please. So conducting a needs assessment is usually the first part you do in this type of funding. So you will conduct a needs assessment to find out what transportation needs your community wants to implement, or what their safety issues are. So that's why we do the needs assessment first, and then you can put in for clean mobility project money depending on what the needs assessment determines. So we talked about, the initial training was about the financial part of it, because this is a voucher reimbursement funding. So you do the work and you complete the project in phases. So how you get reimbursed for those phases. So you're reimbursed after you spend the money on that phase. And then they had an onboarding meeting just to explain how the process works, what information and support you will have for conducting the needs assessment. And then once we started the project, they have really good technical support for this funding with the clean mobility staff and shared mobility too. But so they have monthly meetings that talk about the different phases and different parts you're working on, the survey, the community engagement pieces. And then there are staff available at any time to ask questions and get more information on that phase, or if you're having trouble analyzing the data, that kind of thing. So, and then they just had a constant communication with what's coming up and just dealing with issues. So the next slide, please. So yeah, as I was saying, our project is to conduct a needs assessment. So that needs assessment, the process started out with passing out a survey. So I'll talk about that step a little bit more detail in a minute, but so we wanted to do the survey just to get some initial information. What does the community want to see? Since we don't have sidewalks and we don't have bike lanes, we need road improvements on our reservation. What is this, what is a clean mobility project going to look like if we are going to go ahead and put in for that money? So next slide, please. So in conducting the survey, we did a paper copy and we did an online version. So Clean Mobility Options recommends an Alchemer survey, which used to be Survey Gizmo, I guess. I'd never heard of it, but it was a good format and it was relatively easy to use. So we could design the questions and pick and choose what questions were already there and which one we would use. So I put out the survey and it was open for about 2 months and we got the responses back. And I did have incentives, which I'm sure helped a lot getting the responses back. We gave out $75 gift cards. So we got about 181 responses back and I was shooting for 195. So that was good. So next slide, please. So this is some of our survey results. So as you can see by the first graph, sidewalks are definitely a want for this tribe and a need that they feel is important. Having street lighting was the second one. And then other is we have a problem on this reservation with dogs. Dogs just being loose out of their yards and they will, chase after people on bikes or on walking. So it's in both the second graph too. It's a problem for bicyclists if these dogs aren't, dealt with. So on the second graph, the bike paths and on-street bike lanes and off-street bike paths are a desire. So, and then on the third graph, it was interesting to see that most people, instead of riding, they're using their car and driving everywhere, they are interested in alternative transportation. So that was good to see. And the next slide, please. This slide is a little busy, but basically what I get out of this is that people will use alternative methods of transportation if they're provided to commute to work, which is probably a given. But I thought it was interesting that social recreational use would be in all the different types of transportation. So I thought that was interesting. And I can explain more about our results in the questions too. So next slide, please. So we have had one community engagement event already, which was a workshop that the contractor, so we have a contractor hired to conduct the needs assessment and do the data analysis. So they presented what some initial results were of the survey, and that was their slides. And then we had e-bikes and all electric vehicles at the event so people could check them out in person. So, and next slide. So that describes our project in a nutshell so far. So you have any questions, or there's my contact information if you want more information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask all of our speakers to turn on their cameras, and we'll do Q&A for a few minutes. And if folks haven't gotten to ask questions yet, please go ahead and put your questions in via the questions function on the right. Okay, great. So a few of the questions that we've gotten relate to funding for regular operating costs for tribal research programs. So before I answer that from the CCI side, for both of your programs, can you tell me a little bit more about how your grant worked with operating costs? What did you find that was covered or not covered for completing the project that you all are doing?
I can go first, maybe. We've had a really good experience working with CARB in that we've been able to cover all of our operating costs and, you know, equipment purchases, as I mentioned before, staff time as well. So, you know, you can include all of that in your budget proposal, and it's been a good experience for us. We've obtained a FY18 and an FY19 community air grant. So the way that that worked was for the FY18 grant, it was the 3 years of funding, and then the FY19 grant, you know, 2 of those years we didn't need air technician salary support, so it was just continuing it for that 1 additional year where there would be a gap. So that's kind of how it's worked out, and it's been good.
And then for the needs assessment, the funding so far, it is very flexible. It's provided some staff time. So, you know, I'm doing a lot of on the ground information gathering and coordinating, and then getting our tribal council information about what the needs assessment is finding out. And then incentives, you know, are funded through the grant. So operational costs that way. Just how are you going to get the tribe to know about these different alternative means of transportation, and what is clean mobility about, and what can we actually use? So as far as operational costs, that is mostly covered.
Okay, great. And so to get a little bit about research programs, California Climate Investments does include programs that fund research activities and other non-implementation project activities. But a lot of the research-based programs have exhausted funding and are pending the climate budget. But for example, Community Air Grants, as you just heard, funds operating costs and is currently accepting applications. And a reminder that they do have a workshop tomorrow. And projects can include, but aren't limited to, meeting facilitation for awareness and outreach, hiring technical experts and consultants, as Sean mentioned, also trainers, community planning efforts, including advocacy regarding allocation of AB 617 incentive program funds, and also community-based participatory research projects that align with the purposes of AB 617. They also do community air monitoring support and capacity building. So we also got then a question on educational information that folks can use for outreach to tribal communities. So what I'll do is I'll outline some of the resources that we have within California Climate Investments, and then I'll ask you all if you all reference any of those resources in either communicating about your project to the public or when you were applying. So our #1 resource is absolutely our website. So caclimateinvestments.ca.gov. And there you'll find resources including a funding for tribal governments fact sheet, which outlines all of the programs available through California Climate Investments that tribal governments are eligible for. We also have children's materials for outreach. So you know those games where you have like your fingers in the paper and you're doing this thing? We have one of those for California Climate Investments. And so if you want to have outreach with children's activities, we have those ready for you. We also have project profiles, so if you want to see examples of what other projects have done with this funding, you can. And then we just have a lot of background. So what are priority populations? How does California climate investments work? And also, what does our data look like? Where are our investments going? All of that lives on our website. And so with that, I'll ask you both then, were there any resources that you all used? And are there any resources that, even if you've just created them through the project to be able to get the word out?
So that we did.
Go ahead, Sean.
To say one thing that we did participate in last year was the California Climate Investments annual report. And so we submitted an article and some photos to be included in that annual report. And that was a really good resource to share even with the tribal council so that they can see kind of where this funding is going to work and some of the recognition that this new program got. So that was a really positive benefit.
And so for the needs assessment, a lot of the education outreach is just kind of hands-on, showing the community what is an e-bike like, and they get to drive it. And so we are doing a bike rental, so they get to actually experience what is an e-bike like. And then having those all-electric vehicles at the workshop so that people can see them and ask questions for the owners of what those cars are like and what opportunities they provide. And then as I gather more, specific information from the needs assessment, that'll be incorporated into education outreach, and definitely, talking to tribal council, explaining, okay, this is what residents want, how we're going to make this happen. That'll be that part.
Thank you. So a couple other things that I want to mention is also that the recordings of this webinar are also on the website as are slides for other populations. So for example, if you are at the intersection of being a farmer or owning a business or leading a nonprofit, we've held webinars for each of those audiences as well, and you can watch those recordings and pull up those slides. Now, we did get a question, and I think this is related to the answer we just gave, because somebody asked, what are 617 communities? So the Community Air Protection Program was formed in response to the Assembly Bill 617, and the program's focus is to reduce exposure in communities most impacted by air pollution. Communities around the state are working together to develop and implement new strategies to measure air pollution and reduce health impacts. And 617 communities are communities that have been selected by the California Air Resources Board through the Community Air Protection Program for additional air quality efforts through the blueprint process. So that is the process that Community Air Protection Program is able to prioritize. And then once those communities are selected, they're selected for support with community air monitoring or community emissions reduction. And folks can read more about that at the CAP website, which is linked in the slides. So we're right about at time, and apologies that we're not able to get to more questions, but we are committing to answering your questions. So we will be communicating with you either one-on-one if we've answered your question via the chat, but also we will be emailing out folks and asking if they would like to be connected with program staff that can answer their question. But for now, I want to share a couple extra slides and that I want to leave you all with, and then we'll transition to the second part of the webinar on providing input on program efforts and state efforts and priorities. So with that, I'll invite everyone to turn off their camera, as lovely as your faces are. And we will pull up this presentation again. Okay, so before we leave, we wanted to just let you know about three, before we close off at least this first hour, we wanted to leave you with three opportunities that are outside of California climate investments, but that are efforts that are being led by some of our collaborators within the state that we thought might be really interesting to the folks watching today. So first, I wanted to let folks know about the Cali PA Small Environmental Justice Small Grants Program. And this is open now. So the deadline for this is August 13th. And that workshop that I mentioned for Community Air Grants, Community Air Grants is actually putting the workshop together with this program. And so if you attend that event tomorrow, then you will be able to hear and ask questions about both of these programs at once. And this program funds tribal governments and community-based grassroots and nonprofit organizations that carry out projects to address environmental justice issues. The grant term for this program is 18 months, and the awards can be up to $50,000. Next is the State Reserve. So the State Reserve is a subset of the Carl Moyer Air Quality Standards Attainment Program. And so every year, CARB determines the type of projects that the State Reserve funds will fund. And for the fiscal year of 2020 to 2021, that area of funding is in infrastructure that supports zero emission vehicles. So the eligible projects here are battery charging stations and hydrogen fueling stations. Air districts apply for funding from the State Reserve annually, and then once they are granted funds, then interested tribes would then apply directly through their air districts. So please contact your air district for more information. Last is the Supplemental Environmental Project. So this is a community-based project that provides environmental and public health benefits funded from a portion of penalties received during the settlement of enforcement actions. SEP policy prioritizes funding for projects in disadvantaged communities, and some of the example projects include installation and maintenance of high-performance air filtration systems at schools and implementation of community air monitoring networks, youth air quality education programs, and a lot more. So if you're interested in submitting an SEP proposal or want to learn more about the program, please feel free to reach out to the SEP team at sep@arb.ca.gov. Okay, so with that, I wanted to get a sense of how folks were feeling about the information that we just gave everyone. Well, actually, let me open up the poll. Since a lot of folks were new to California climate investments, I'm curious about whether folks were able to identify any funding opportunities that they would be interested in learning more about or potentially applying to either immediately or a little further down the road. Okay, and we'll give it just a couple more seconds. Okay. So this is pretty cool. It seems like a lot of the programs that folks were able to hear about today really seem to resonate and are potentially a fit for folks that are watching. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can help guide you in any way. And please take advantage of all of the contact information that we've included in the slides. So that contact information is what the programs have told us is the best way to be able to get a hold of them. So please, please, please check that out as you learn more. And then lastly is we have a newsletter that we release every 2 months. And in that newsletter, we include all of the program updates that we can. So we share news stories about programs, but we also share announcements as well as when solicitations open or when webinars like these happen. So if you would like to be signed up for that, please click yes, and we'll go ahead and add you to the listserv. And there's nothing else you got to do other than open your emails now and then. So I'll go ahead and close that poll in about 3 seconds. So if you haven't gotten to click your preference, please go ahead and do so now. Okay. So with that, I wanted to leave you all with the contact information for our speakers. And while this is up, I'll go ahead and start transitioning us to the next portion of the webinar, which will be ways to give input on some of the big program priorities and efforts that are happening within the state. So in the second portion, we will be focusing on two efforts specifically. One is through the Strategic Growth Council, along with the California Energy Commission, for the California Tribal Gap Analysis. And then the other is internal here to CARB, and it is the investment plan that is currently being prepared that helps guide investments. And you'll hear more about that from Kelly. Oh, actually, and one more thing, I almost forgot. We do have a survey here that we ask folks to fill out. You will be getting that when we send up our follow-up email. But just know that if you fill out the survey, you can be entered to win $25. So if you want some free money for having attended today, I suggest that you fill it out. Okay, so moving on to ways to provide input. As mentioned earlier, this is in collaboration with the California Tribal Gap Analysis, and so we'll have Joshua Simmons talk to us a little bit and tell us a little bit about that effort. But before we do, for anybody who just jumped in for only the second portion of the webinar, we wanted to remind folks that you can participate by either asking questions through the question function, through Twitter at CA Climate Invest, or you can email us at info@caclimateinvestments.ca.gov. These instructions are also in the handout section that you should be able to find on the right in the controls for GoToWebinar. So with that, I'd like to introduce you all to Josh, if you don't know him already. So Joshua, lovely to see you. So Joshua is the founder, president, principal consulting, just general renaissance man of Prosper Sustainably. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his effort. Go ahead and take it away, Josh.
Thank you very much, Christina. I really appreciate all the opportunities you're presenting today and for the opportunity for me to share more information about the California Clean Energy and Climate Change Gap Analysis Project. Next slide, please. And next slide. So the goals of the California Clean Energy and Climate Change Tribal Gap Analysis, which is administered by the Strategic Growth Council and funded by the California Energy Commission, are first to identify tribal priorities, needs, and barriers in the areas of clean energy and climate change adaptation and resilience. And through this study, we will be providing recommendations to the state for programs, funding, including grants, technical assistance, and any other recommendations to address identified needs, gaps, and barriers. These recommendations will be primarily informed and shaped by tribal input through a tribal questionnaire, which I'll explain more in a moment. And another goal of this project is to advance collaboration and build relationships between California tribes and the state. And I want to emphasize that these programs, or the scope of this study, is all California tribes, including those without federal recognition and those without a land base. So for tribes, the key benefits are the opportunity to inform future state clean energy and climate change programs for tribes, as I mentioned, which could include grant funding, and to address the identified needs, and also direct access to the database of clean energy and climate change funding and other opportunities that for California tribes that we are developing, which is kind of the foundation of the study for which we then can identify gaps. Next slide, please. In terms of the timeline, we are currently in the process of administering the tribal questionnaire, which I mentioned is the primary source of information and data to inform this study and the recommendations we'll be making to the state. So that started a few months ago and is going to continue through the end of the summer. It is scheduled to close out on September 30th. Those that participate in the questionnaire will receive a copy of the response and a direct link to the database that we have developed. We will also follow up with participants for any clarification if needed. We are simultaneously conducting secondary research, and that includes reaching out to tribal serving agencies and organizations such as CCI to better understand all the funding opportunities that are out there to ensure that tribes are aware of that and we understand what actually see where the gaps may be that are not necessarily being filled. And we will refer to some other secondary information data sets too to inform the study, including past events such as the energy summits that have been held with tribes in California. After the questionnaire is concluded, we will transition into the data analysis piece, which will really be in the fall of 2021. With that data analysis, we will then draft the report, which we will send out to tribes for feedback, and then we expect to finalize and release the report by spring of next year. Next slide, please. So our team consists of the state committee. I mentioned the Strategic Growth Council and California Energy Commission. On the contractor team, Prosper Sustainably is the lead, which includes myself and Angie Hacker. We are partnering with GC Green, led by Liz Perez, who's a member of the North Fork Rancheria. Our Energy, which is led by Dustin Jolly, who formerly was an engineer with Yurok. SGC Consulting, led by Shasta Gaughan, and UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation, which will be leading the data analysis piece of this project. Next slide, please. So we are really right now doing everything we can to encourage as many tribes as possible to register and then complete a questionnaire. So a general outline of the questionnaire is on the left side of this slide, which for general information, clean energy, climate change, and then general gaps and recommendations. And so I really want to encourage you to go to our website to participate. If you go to our website, it's at the very top. You can click on the link, and that'll bring you to that registration form. You can fill in some information, and you have two options to either do it self-administered or do it as a guided questionnaire. And we have dozens of tribes currently working on completing their questionnaire, and we hope that if you are not already in the queue, that you will be registering and hopefully completing yours soon as well. Next slide. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So if anybody would like more information, please visit caltribalgapanalysis.org or contact Josh directly with questions. And if at any point anybody needs to hop off before we get to show his contact information again, please feel free to email us, message us, and we'll send you his information right away. So thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you.
So we've made it. We are at our final speaker for today. So I hope that you all have learned a lot and are about to learn just the slightest bit more. And with that, I'll invite Kelly up. So Kelly Kerber is going to discuss the fourth investment plan, its purpose, timeline, and ways to provide input about priorities and needs. And she is a climate investments policy section manager here at CARB. So take it away, Kelly.
Thank you, Christina. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time to attend this webinar today. My name is Kelly Kerber. I'm the manager of the Climate Policy section in the Climate Investments branch at the California Air Resources Board. And as Christina mentioned, we have one last effort we'd like to share with you all this afternoon, which is an update on the development of the fourth investment plan. So what is the investment plan? It's a high-level document designed to guide the investment of cap and trade auction proceeds by identifying priority investment opportunities. The Department of Finance, which is basically the governor's budget office, works with CARB to put this plan together every 3 years. We are developing the fourth one now, and we want to share with you our timeline and get your input on key investment priorities that we should be considering. Before I do so, I do want to clarify that even though this investment plan guides investments over a 3-year period, there is still an annual budget process during which the legislature and the governor actually decide which programs receive funding. The investment plan does not guarantee that a program will get funding in a particular year, but instead it establishes high-level priorities for the administration that inform the annual budget process. So next slide. So in terms of our timeline, we had a public workshop back in February. We're now coordinating with stakeholders in developing a draft plan, and we expect to release the draft plan for public comment later this summer. We're really pleased to be able to use this webinar as an opportunity to share this information with you before we release our draft. And after the draft plan comes out, we'll hold another public workshop. Our board will hear an informational update on the plan later this fall, which provides another opportunity for public comment as well. And in January of 2022, the plan will go to the legislature at the same time as the governor releases his proposed budget. So next slide. Thank you. So that's where we are in the overall process. I do want to spend a few minutes sharing with you some of the guiding principles that we've been using to develop the plan. So first, in recognition of the worsening climate crisis, we are proposing for the investment plan to focus on supporting implementation of state climate goals. Things like achieving carbon neutrality, supporting zero-emission vehicle deployment, nature-based solutions, and more. Second, we are proposing to prioritize investments that can advance equity and environmental justice by providing benefits to those most in need and facilitating community participation. So this could include things like directing more resources to certain communities, strategies to improve access to funding, supporting planning and capacity building, or other mechanisms. So third, many project types that reduce greenhouse gas emissions have important co-benefits that can improve public health. So for example, through improved air quality or more exercise from active transportation. And fourth, we are looking forward towards building a climate resilient and prosperous economic future. So this includes a number of things such as investments that save people money through reduced energy bills or that help develop employment pathways through workforce development. And finally, one of the themes that we heard at our workshop and through our other conversations throughout this process is the need for improved coordination across agencies and funding alignment that is consistent across programs. So we're looking at where there are opportunities for agencies to enhance their coordination and make sure that our investments are all moving in the same direction. So with that background in mind, oh, next slide, please. So with that background in mind, I'd now like to open it up for discussion. I see we have maybe a few minutes. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I also have a few specific questions for you, although we are happy to discuss any issues that are of interest to this group. As I'm reading these questions, any responses that come to mind, feel free to drop them in the chat. First, what kinds of projects or programs would you most like to see funded? And second, how can state climate funding support tribal participation? An example of what we have in mind here is funding for capacity building, outreach approaches, etc. And third, and relatedly, we'd be interested in learning more about the barriers Indigenous peoples and tribal nations face in accessing programs. So with that, maybe you can open it up for questions. Yeah.
So with that, if anybody has any questions related to the investment plan, then go ahead and drop them into the questions box. But also, if you would like to answer any of these questions that you see on the screen that Kelly just presented, go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute you so that you can give your feedback and input. Okay, so one question we got is, will we be touching on the funding source that requires you to fill out the question sheet before getting access? I'm a little confused about that question. So that was I think you're talking about the California Tribal Gap Analysis. So that was what Josh just presented on. And that is the questionnaire that you would fill out in order to get access to that database that I mentioned.
Christina, did you want me to answer that question?
If you would like, but I think we want to also keep it open for the investment plan if possible. So maybe a short response.
Okay, if you don't want me to, that's fine. I would need you to repeat it. I apologize.
Go ahead. It'll give folks to be able to ask questions anyway.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question if you want me to answer it?
Sure. Well, they just asked if we'd be touching on the funding source that requires you to fill out the question sheet before getting access. And I just answered and said that funding source was the California Tribal Gap Analysis.
Yeah, and it's not so much a funding source, it's the funding database, and we're just, we're not, we'll make it available to all tribes, but those that complete the questionnaire will receive it directly emailed to them.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm not seeing any questions come in, and I'm not seeing any raised hands. And so I think what we might do is we have 8 minutes left. We want folks to be able to participate in asking questions for the fourth investment plan where possible. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put up our contact information for this section. That way, in case anybody is waiting for that contact information, they can go ahead and get it now. But we are committing to being here until 3 o'clock. So if any of questions come up or any thoughts come up that you'd like to raise to Kelly, then please go ahead and do so, and we will be here. And so here's the contact information for Kelly. So if you prefer to reach out to her directly, please do so here at kelly.kerber@arb.ca.gov. And she has provided 2 links here to help you stay updated. You can stay updated by going to the investment plan website and learning more information there. Or you can also subscribe to the listserv that'll give you updates once you sign up. And then we can do that poll later, but here is some contact information and also the survey again. So if you'd like to get in contact with either Kelly or Joshua, please feel free to reach out. And Kelly, we got one question in. What are the funding or investment amounts, and are they grants? So I think they want a little more clarification on what this investment plan funds, like what funds the investment plan is trying to touch on, I guess.
Yeah, so the investment plan is a very broad planning document that covers fiscal years 2022 through 2025. And there's no specific dollar amounts in the document. It's really highlighting priority investments for the legislature to consider while they're going through their annual budget process. So it talks high level about project types, most likely, and where we should be prioritizing our considerations, but doesn't necessarily go into detail on funding amounts for specific programs.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, no raised hands quite yet. But Kelly, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the structure for engaging. And so I know that this is a lot of new information for folks, especially since a lot of folks are hearing about California climate investments for the first time. And so how often do folks get to engage with the investment plan, and what are some great ways to be able to participate if they want to mull it over right now, but would really like the opportunity to later on in this process?
Great, thank you for that, Christina. So there's 2 specific opportunities for public comment coming up. We have our workshop that I mentioned that'll be probably in late summer, early fall, and that will be a chance to provide input and hear a presentation on the draft investment plan. And then following that, there will be a informational board item at our CAR board meeting in November in the fall. And that'll be another opportunity to provide public comment. But in addition to that, me and my team, we're always open for engagement. So please feel free to reach out to me at the email that Christina provided. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to set up a chat with us to learn more about the plan or provide some more specific input, we're always more than happy to have a chat and hear from you. And then we also provided on one of the slides a link to our listserv so that you can stay up to date on any updates coming up.
And you'll be able to find the link to the listserv here, and you'll be able to click it and it'll take you right there as soon as we post the slides. So I'm going to put Kelly's questions up, and we got an answer to one of these questions, Kelly. And everybody, if you agree with what this person voiced, please feel free to just say that you agree in the chat. It'll be really helpful to know, is this a consensus concern? So somebody said, one barrier we encounter is often climate change funds focus on infill development or increased public transit, etc., and other activities that don't make sense for us that are in a more rural or remote community.
And that's great. I'd be really interested to hear actually some specifics on some project types that you would like to see funded that you're just not able to find a funding source for. If you're not able to share that now, please reach out to me, but definitely interested to hear more about that and details there.
So if you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see, please put it in the chat for us. We also got another comment, which is that our tribe would like to see investment funds focused on bioenergy, waste biomass conversion to baseload electricity, specifically high hazard fuel reduction, forest waste biomass.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And I see the commenters, so we will definitely reach out if we have questions about that.
Okay. Are there any other kinds of projects or programs that folks would like to see funded that would fall under, you know, the umbrella that we've presented today, but that you'd really like Kelly to know about to be able to incorporate further down in the investment plan process? I think folks are shy today, Kelly. But I think that's okay. So we're coming up at time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start closing up, but I'm going to put, once again, the contact slides up. Kelly is really responsive and really amazing, and her whole team has been really amazing with putting this investment plan together. And so I know that she would be very willing to hear input now, a week from now, a month from now. I think there's been a real effort to try to incorporate different priorities, but really with an emphasis on equity and for an emphasis on thinking about the priorities of folks that don't always know how to weigh in or haven't been allowed in the room to be able to weigh in on some of these priorities. So anything that you'd like to voice to her, I know that she would really welcome it. So I'm putting the contact slides up now. And feel free to take down any information and reach out to folks. And otherwise, thank you so much for joining us here today. Please make sure to take the feedback survey, enter and get your $25, but also tell us how we did. Tell us what you liked and what you didn't like about this webinar and what you want to see more of. It would really help us to be able to make sure that we can make this experience better for folks in the future and down the line. And with that, I hope that you all have a great Tuesday. I hope that you all learned a lot, and I hope that you all found some funding opportunities that you want to take advantage of, or processes that you for input that you want to jump into and weigh in on. So thank you, everyone.